Patrick, thank you for joining us. What brings you to ICOE 2016?
I'm giving a talk on U.S. Navy's wave energy test site here tomorrow, but primarily just to interact with others in the marine energy industry. Already done quite a bit of that, and much more to come. So it's a great venue for interaction.
So, whilst the U.S. Navy is on the water, you don't initially think of wave energy and the U.S. Navy. Tell us a little about that.
Right, good point. The Navy has some aggressive goals in terms of reducing its consumption of fossil fuels and becoming more energy independent. I think the Navy would call it energy security. So wave energy could play a number of roles in the future with offshore delivered energy for buoys or data collection, but also they're concerned about shore infrastructure and reducing fossil fuel consumption on their bases, which obviously are generally along coastlines. So a lot of interest in marine energy.
You're doing this out of the rather aptly named Hawaii WETS. What is that site?
The site itself is comprised of 3 test berths, all of which are now cabled to shore as of this last year. 2 deeper berths at 60 and 80 meter water depths can have a 1 megawatt capacity each to shore, and then a shallow berth at 30 meters that's actually been there for some time has a 250 kilowatt capacity to shore. So it's the test berths, the cables to shore, and a shoreside termination site where data feeds arrive and where power is delivered to the grid. So it is the only grid-connected test site in the United States.
Where does wave and tidal sit in America's priority for renewables?
That's probably a question best answered by the Department of Energy or perhaps by the Navy, but there's a rapidly growing emphasis on wave and tidal. Probably more research dollars being directed on the wave side right now in recognition of the fact that it's got farther to go. The U.S. has not perhaps been out in front in marine energy as much as Europe has, the UK in particular, and other parts of Europe. But I think there's a concerted effort now to catch up and make our own contribution to the global effort. So I think it's a visible and growing part of the U.S. renewable portfolio.
So why Hawaii?
Well, there's a long history of relationship with the particular location. Back to 2003 when the Navy worked with a company called OPT, Ocean Power Technologies, to test a device at this 30-meter berth. So it was really sort of an obvious path forward to expand that test site and expand that effort in that location. But also Hawaii does have a good year-round reliable wave energy resource, particularly on the windward or eastern sides of our islands. We get a steady trade wind-driven wave environment, plus some good north swells in the winter to test survivability of devices. So we're perhaps, we're not as energetic a site as, say, EMEC in Scotland or proposed sites in more northern latitudes. But it's a good place to do testing of wave energy kind of year-round. You have some greater degree of accessibility to the site to work on devices that are under test. So it's really an excellent proving ground prior to going into those really much more energetic sites.
So you have the first demonstration project in position. What are your next steps to populate the rest of the berths?
Right, so there's a device at the 30-meter site now. It's been in since the end of May of last year, 2015. There's a second device from a Norwegian company being deployed by an American company actually called Sound and Sea Technology. It's a Fred.Olsen device. That's ready to go any day, basically. As soon as weather permits, we'll get that one out to our 60-meter berth. And then late this year, Ocean Energy from Ireland will deploy an oscillating water column device, a much larger device, more power production than these first two. So we're excited about that one. Columbia Power Technologies is already funded by the U.S. Navy to come in and test, with also support funding coming from Department of Energy on that project as well. That'll be later in 2017. And then Northwest Energy Innovations, which is actually the company that has this first device in the water, will deploy a grid scale device. This first one is a smaller prototype or experimental device. So they'll deploy a grid scale device in looking like about sometime in 2018. Schedules are obviously in flux.
So what is the University of Hawaii's interest in this site?
Well, obviously our location in proximity to the Navy's test site makes us an obvious candidate to sort of be a research arm. But the University of Hawaii has a pretty robust presence in global research on oceans and atmosphere, and we're within a school at the university called the School of Ocean and Earth Science and Technology. And so we have a wealth of oceanographers, meteorologists, ocean engineers who can bring their expertise to bear and hopefully help both the Navy and Department of Energy get the most out of this testing that they can.
So what are the next steps?
Next steps for now are just to step through this sequence of devices, make sure we get the good environmental data collected. We support the site from on these first several test projects that I outlined from a logistics standpoint, through in large part a marine services company, marine engineering company called Sea Engineering that we work closely with. They do most of our in-water work at the site. So basically to just keep doing our job in terms of environmental collection and device performance monitoring for the next few years, and then wait to see what the Navy and Department of Energy have in store, which is quite a bit. There are several DOE programs aimed at maturing technologies that presumably will ultimately test at WETS, although not necessarily. So we hope there's a life for the test site beyond these first few devices that I've outlined.
Very exciting times for everyone.
It is indeed, yeah. We've got a long way to go, but it's going to be a fun path.
Thank you very much, Patrick.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Thanks for the invitation.